Hi, my friends. We're just getting kicked off here. We're going to give people just a couple minutes to get signed on. And today we're talking about how to get more yeses instead of us getting slammed with the no or the I have to think about it or straight out rejected. We're going to talk about how we can convert those to yeses. Or the other really big one that a lot of people are hearing is, well, I want the sellers are saying to the real estate investor, well, I want what Zillow says that it's worth, or I want retail price. And a lot of times what's happening is that some people will just write that seller off. They'll say, well, they want retail price. That's not a good lead for me. And today, what we get to do is we get to help you break through that barrier. We get to help you understand how to sort good lead from bad lead and actually how to convert these. So as we're getting signed on here, feel free, because we're live, feel free to type questions, or if you pick up the replay of this later, feel free to type questions in the comments below, and I'll do my best to make sure that everything gets answered today. And I want to make sure that basically you're able to take this and then run, like implement inside your business. That's the goal of this. Like if we go live like this, we want to make sure that you can take these tactics and run right away with it. So we're getting everything set up right now. It's starting to sync over to Facebook. Awesome. That's working. And then syncing over to our group. So there's a replay available. And I see we've got folks signing on right now. We've got Ahmed, Diana, Michael. Michael, nice to have you on, man. Nice to have you, Diana. Ahmed, nice to have you. Richard, Wilson, and the names kind of keep piling on there. So awesome. Let me know this. Where are you listening from today as my first question? And then my second question is this: what is your goal for this, for properties? Do you want to buy and hold? Do you want to wholesale? Do you want to fix and flip? Help me understand that. That'll help me tailor this message a little bit to you. So as you meet with sellers and as you talk to sellers, we can get a little more specific. So what is your goal? Where are you listening from today? And what is your goal with the property once you get the property? And those of you that are on Zoom, you can use the chat or the Q&A section. And those of you that are in, we've got Richard saying Orlando. Awesome. I love Orlando. You can use the chat section right below the video, literally right below the screen right here. And then I can see those comments as they come up. And those comments are what I'll be watching for here at the end. So we're going to go into this. I want to get a little bit deep too. So I really do want to know, what is your end goal with a house? Do you want to buy and hold? Do you want to wholesale? Or do you want to buy, fix, and sell? Or if there's something else that I'm not covering in one of those three buckets, then tell me, okay? Do you want to buy and hold? Do you want to buy and wholesale? Or do you want to buy, fix, and sell? And those are generally the three things that most real estate investors do with properties. I'm sure there's other things that happen with properties too, but I want to know from you, what is your goal with all of this stuff? Okay, so here's what we're covering today. We're getting a lot of people signed on now. Fix and sell, BH, buy and hold. Okay, awesome. Diana's in Pittsburgh. She likes to buy and hold. For John he wants to go for the wholesale and buy and hold. Good man, John. Awesome. we want to get some more holds in that portfolio for you. And then Diane is doing Path to Home Ownership. Great program. Awesome. Okay, so we got a mix of people here. Okay, so I'll try to take it down each path so that we can go into this a little bit deep though. Okay, I'm a big fan of using actual real life stories to tie messages to. So you're going to hear me doing that quite a bit today. I want to make sure that these messages get, not only do you like learn while we're spending this time together, but you can actually remember what's happening so then you can implement it in your business. I know for me, like when I sit down with sellers or if I talk to them over the phone, the times that I get the most when I'm talking to someone that taught me something is when there's a story that's told, and then I can remember the story when I'm sitting with the seller. And that way there, I can explain it to the seller, and it just helps the whole thing flow so much better. So I'm going to be going into like real life, what we do to make our deals work and make them flow through better. And then what we do to prevent the word no from happening. And there's three fundamental things that we need to do to prevent that big word no from happening. Now, I'm not going to promise anyone here that like you're never going to hear the word no. That's not physically possible. I mean, if you're generating a lot of leads, you should hear no sometimes, but there should be a certain percentage of folks that come back to you. We can talk about those a little bit later too, on what percents we look for. But when you're generating leads, seller leads that are coming to you, particularly through social media or maybe some other path that's similar where they're coming to you asking for your help, then you should be able to hear a lot more yeses if you follow the three techniques that we're gonna go through today. Okay. All right, let's get into it. You guys excited? I hope so, because this has been on my heart for a while, and I'm just gonna tell it to you exactly like it is. So most commonly, real estate investors are breaking these three things that we're going to talk about. And that's why they're hearing the word no. They just kind of get a little bit off track. And it's probably not what you're thinking right now, because the whole model of this presenting offers has drastically changed in the last 3 years. And so we want to make sure that you got the updates. Okay. It's kind of like when your computer needs a software update. Let's make sure you get the update. This is going to be the update today for your presentation of offers and how you're talking to sellers on the phone. Okay. All right. So most real estate investors do this. When they get into a property, they go in thinking about themselves. Okay. I understand that, right? It's a little bit, we have to be somewhat selfish to make sure that like we've got the deal and we got the numbers all lined up so that they work for us. And then what happens is that right from going in from kind of a selfish standpoint up front, they start to seed killing the deal. I'll explain that in just a couple of minutes, but they start to seed killing the deal because they're going in thinking about only themselves in their head. They're going through the numbers. They're thinking, I got to buy it for this and only this. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. And they put themselves almost in the corner with those selfish thoughts. And what I'm going to tell you right now is that we have to think about the seller. The seller is the most important person at the table. Like when we're sitting down with them to talk to them, or if it's over the phone at first, we got to put them first. Okay. We need to listen more than we talk. So I want you to ask yourself this question right now. Are you hearing the word no a lot from sellers right now? Are you hearing the word no way more often than the word yes? And when I say way, I mean like noticeably, if you looked at your numbers, and you should track all your numbers, are you hearing 9 no's and then maybe only 1 yes? If you're getting like scary numbers like that, then you probably need to really pay attention to what we're talking about today. Okay. What may have worked for you in the past might not necessarily work for you in the future anymore, because there's a new way of doing this whole business. And what sometimes like the stuff in the past, it would be almost a mistake to do it today. And I'm going to explain that. You probably heard of these iBuyers, right? And let me know if you haven't, in the chat roll or in the comments, tell me, no, I haven't heard of the iBuyers. If you have, tell me that too. Like I want to know, do you know the iBuyers? Do you know that they doubled in 2000 from 2018 to 2019 in most of the markets that they were in? They doubled in bandwidth. They doubled in size in 1 year, almost 1 year. A couple of them went from 0.6% of the market, which is still sounds small. It's really big actually to buy 0.6% of a major metropolitan market. And they went to over 1% in a calendar year, 2018 to 2019. Now I know there's going to be some people that say, well, Nate, hold on. During the whole like COVID thing, they pulled back. Yeah, some of them did. Zillow pulled back a little bit. Open Door pulled back. Some of the big ones did. But you know what? There's 12 other ones besides the behemoths that are also iBuyers that have moved in, and they haven't pulled back. A lot of them are doubling down right now, going harder. So the iBuyers are making a dent in the market. Now, it's not like should scare you or I out of this business. It shouldn't at all, because they're really going after a very specific box. But what we should pay attention to is what they're doing to the market, the new standard they're setting for the market. There's this new way of doing business. So the days of us just going in with a low cash offer without explaining it, without building rapport, without doing the 3 steps we're going to talk about today, they're over. I mean, maybe if you find someone that doesn't know anything about the new way of doing business, those old techniques might work sometimes. but because of this new wave has been set, we've got to follow suit with it. Okay. Now they set the standard based on this. It's super easy to work with them. They're very transparent. And because of that process, they build trust. Easy to work with. They're transparent. They build trust. Doesn't sound too complicated, does it? No. In fact, what I did is I actually went on a 2-week journey where I went through several of the iBuyer funnels. I'd see their ad, I'd click on it, I'd enter in a house, I'd go through the whole process. And it's got to be a real house, because most of them, what they do is they look on tax records to see if your name matches the name that you submit to them to make an offer to. So I had to pull up a rental house and go through the whole circle back, start to finish on it. But what I learned from that is what they are, what their standard is. Like, it's so easy. I can get an offer in 24 hours and they put it on this financial sheet. I mean, it's literally black and white. It tells me what market value is and why they're paying what they're paying. They're not hiding anything. They don't hide their numbers. They don't hide their profit. Everything is very open book. And for a seller to have that much ease where they don't even have to talk to somebody, they can literally just do it all online. And then they can see the numbers like that presented to them with transparency. That builds a lot of trust. And that set a new precedent for a lot of these offers that are going out to sellers right now. So I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I building trust with my sellers? And it probably will result from this one other question, and it's, am I talking more than I'm listening? Sometimes we get caught up thinking that we have to be the one that like is driving the whole conversation and leading, but it's not that way. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We should be asking questions. Yes, we might want to steer the conversation by asking the right questions, but it shouldn't be us talking the whole time. It should be us listening. 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? That old concept. Well, it's so true. But we get so stuck on our ideal situation that unfortunately we get a little bit lost and we start talking, and that's not the way that we want it. Like, we start saying these things in our head like, oh, this would be the perfect wholesale deal if I could just get it for this price. Or we might even say, oh, this is the perfect fix and flip if they just got to give me the house for this number, 70% of market value minus repairs. Or the other one, this is kind of one of my new favorites, and this thought goes through my mind even too, and it probably crosses yours, but oh gosh, if the seller would just seller finance me this house, then I wouldn't have to bring money to the table, and then I could cash flow it as a rental. Well, here's the real answer. The seller, in their mind, to those questions, if they could like go through back and forth to telepathy, they would be saying, no, I have a kid and my kid has to go to college and I have bills to pay too. They do. These sellers have real life expenses. So unfortunately, they can't just give in to just the lowball cash offer. Okay. That doesn't mean that some won't sell for the low cash offer, as long as it's presented right. And I'm going to get into that. Okay. We can't just expect that we throw a low cash offer out there being like a punch in the gut, that it's just going to go through. It doesn't work that way at all. Okay. They need sometimes to move to a new house. So they need some moving money. Okay. They need to pay for their child's college. Sometimes they need a chunk of cash to put into their kids' college savings account. We don't necessarily know what it is though, unless we listen more than we talk. And then we have to really understand that. So if we talk more than we listen, then people actually tend to get grumpy with us, is what happens. You probably remember the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph had a bunch of older brothers. He was the little sibling, and he used to go around bragging all the time, talking, saying, someday I'm going to be the ruler and you're going to be bowing to me. And the little brother was saying this to his older brothers. And you know what the older brothers did? Because that little kid just kept talking and talking and said all this crazy stuff, they sold him into slavery. No joke. They were going to throw him in a pit, but there was a traveling group going by that bought slaves, and they said, you know what? We're selling him into slavery. Young Joseph gets hauled off, literally goes into slavery, then later gets thrown in jail, sits in jail for 13 years, all because he talked and talked and talked. And it wasn't until one night he started listening more than he talked. Now, he listened because another guy in prison had a dream that meant something, and he listened so intently, so well, that he was able to interpret the dream and help the guy. Later on, years later, the guy went and told, the guy returned to work at the palace with the pharaoh, And the Pharaoh was having trouble with a dream. And then this guy's like, I met this dude named Joseph in jail, in prison, and he's a really good listener, and he interpreted this dream. Well, it wasn't until he listened that he was able to get free. I'll tell you the rest of that story in a little bit here, but it wasn't until he listened. Well, I'll just tell you now. What happened is then the Pharaoh calls him in and says, hey, Joseph, this guy tells me you can listen well and interpret dreams. Joseph lays out the dream on him. The Pharaoh's so impressed that not only does he release him from prison, but he later puts them in charge of running most of the land, kind of as a governor. But it wasn't until this dude listened. So right now, ask yourself, am I listening? Am I listening with the intent to help? Okay. If you're not listening with the intent to help, then this business gets really tough with sellers. It does, because we have to understand the seller's position backwards and forwards. Okay. When you help someone first, everybody wins in the end with this. Sometimes what they need, it's pretty simple. Sometimes it can be as simple as, hey, Nate, I need a little bit of moving money. I need to get to the next place in life. I need a security deposit. And I need, to pay for that moving truck to rent it for the day. And if you listen and cough up that as part of the deal, then sometimes the deal will go through. We're signing another deal. Actually, it's already signed a day or two ago. Maybe last night it got signed. I was speaking with our office about it today. But we've got a seller in Milwaukee right now that this seller, he literally is letting us take over his mortgage on his property completely. We're going to make the payments directly to the bank. He's letting us take over the property. And, the ironic thing is that we like to do rent to own with those properties after we get them. The ironic thing to me is that this guy's already got a tenant in the property that pays rent every single month, not in default, not behind, nothing like that. And the tenant wants to buy it. So it's crossing my mind and I'm scratching my head saying, well, why didn't this guy do a rent to own with his own tenant? I might not ever be able to answer that question because I don't know on this one, because I didn't get to talk to seller with someone else on our team that did. But here's the thing. We figured out enough to understand and know what this seller really wanted, and we were able to give it to him. We listened. We gave him the contract that he wanted. He signed the contract. Now we're taking over this property, and we've got a rent to own tenant in place on the property, just like that. So it's kind of amazing when you listen. Okay. Now, my dad, he had this 1977 Chevrolet pickup truck, and he was selling it, and he wanted $3,000 for it. And at the time, $3,000 was over market value. Like, it was probably only worth $2,500, this old truck, right? And others tried to come along and lowball him. They gave him the lowball cash offer, right? The punch in the gut that we talk about here. And he said, nope, not selling it for that. It's worth $3,000. I want $3,000. That's it. And at the time, I was running my first ever business. I was painting houses to pay for school. And I didn't have a truck like that. And I really could use a truck like that, but I definitely didn't have $3,000 to spare. And so I started doing some thinking on it. And I'm like, if I could get that truck, then I could actually get some more bigger houses, because you need bigger ladders to get the bigger houses. I get some bigger houses, and then I could afford to pay for that truck. The truck would pay for itself without a problem, because it would haul more ladders. It would get me the bigger paint jobs. I'd be able to get some of those jobs right away. I just don't have the $3,000. So I went to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I'll give you the $3,000 for your truck. And then my dad was like, you will? And I said, yeah, I'll give you the $3,000 for your truck. And I'm pretty sure at that moment, it didn't matter what the rest of the conversation was to my dad. I just made him happy by listening. And I told him that I would give him the number that he wanted. Now, here's the rest of the conversation. It was, Dad, I don't have the $3,000 today. I have a little bit today. But you see, the thing is that if I get that truck, I'm going to get a couple more paint jobs, and then I'll be able to pay you for the truck. But I just need a little bit of time. So I'll take the truck now. I'll go do the other paint jobs, these big paint jobs, and then I'll circle back and I'll pay you. So I'm going to pay you on a seller finance deal. That was a seller finance deal, just like that. But for him, all he heard was the $3,000. He was happy. He heard the rest. But what was most important to him was his number, listening, right? Listening more than we talk. And so we signed a little contract together, and I did what I said I was going to do. I got the truck. I did some paint jobs. I paid him off. He was happy. I was happy. Now, what if you and I did the same thing with the seller that gets stuck on a number? Have you ever had a seller that was stuck on a number? Maybe it was retail price, or maybe in my dad's case, it was over retail price. We're talking a good 10, 15% over market value that my dad wanted for his truck. And I gave it to him anyways. Why did I give it to him? Because it made sense to me from a business perspective. I was able to make cash flow off that vehicle. How many times have you met with a seller before where they get stuck on a number, and that's their number, that's their big thing, that you've just walked away from it? Now, could you have taken that property at a low enough monthly payment where you could have turned around and rented it for a higher payment and made the cash flow spread in the middle? Think about that one next time you sit down with a seller that gets stuck with a number. Okay. So when everybody else lowballed my dad, I gave my dad what he wanted. I gave him full price. I just did it on my terms. And it's no different with sellers of houses. Sometimes we're going to listen to them. And if their thing is, I'm not saying you buy all houses like this. I'm just saying that sometimes this stuff makes sense. So if their thing is the number, then look at the number, look at it closely. What if you could make 300 small monthly payments towards that over the next 10 years? Would that number make sense to you then? Or the next 30 years, like a traditional mortgage, would that number make sense to you then? Oftentimes it's more the monthly payment or the interest rate that drives the equation more than the actual amount you're paying. If you're paying a 4% interest loan versus an 8% interest loan, it's a huge difference. Very, very big difference. Okay. Now, the thing is this. The next part of this whole equation comes down to, does the seller feel pressure? Okay. Now watch this. When you meet with a seller, they're making one of the biggest financial decisions that they've ever made in their entire life. Now, if you've ever met with a seller before, give me a comment in the comments and let me know, did you feel pressure or did you feel like it was easy? Okay. I want to know from your perspective. We're going to talk about the seller in a moment here, but from your perspective, was there any pressure or was it easy? You can just type pressure if you felt that there was pressure. If you felt that it was easy, you can type easy. This is a curious survey of mine here. Okay. Now, a lot of times for us as the person sitting down with the seller, like we practice, like we get ready. We want to feel confident when we're there. We don't want to look like a fool while we're there. So we prepare for this. But the seller, a lot of times, Mike feels pressure. Yeah, it can be tense. I mean, the first time I did it, I was darn near shaken. Like I was nervous. I felt like I was speaking on a stage in front of people. I mean, it was just the seller and his wife. But the first time that I did it directly with the seller, I was nervous. I had pressure on me. Now, can you imagine the pressure that's on the seller? Think about this. A house is usually the biggest single investment that people make in their entire life. $200,000, $500,000, whatever the price is, it doesn't matter. Oftentimes people don't have $500,000 in a retirement account or a checking account. Like their house, this is the biggest single investment that they've ever made in their entire life. This is a really big decision for them. And we can't take that lightly. We've got to recognize that. We got to appreciate that. So what we have to do is we have to let some of that pressure out of the room. Now think about this. The average steam train is powered by what we call a steam engine. And the way that works, how they get so much pull to pull 300, 400 cars that are loaded down with all this stuff on them. These steam engines, what they're doing is the conductor or engineer is taking coal, shoveling it into a hot furnace. That hot furnace is boiling water and it's pushing steam through pipes. And that steam is so high pressurized that it's literally churning that wheel on the rail. That wheel on the rail has 50,000 pounds of pressure on it to turn that big train wheel. Imagine that, 50,000 pounds of pressure. Now, when you think about it like that, you might think like, gosh, why don't these steam engines explode more often? But there's one reason that they don't. They very rarely explode. It's because the designers of them knew that there would be a lot of pressure on these pipes and that the pipes could get weak over time. So what they did is they installed something called a safety valve. And this little tiny safety valve, it recognizes the pressure in the room, the pressure in the pipe, so to speak. And what it does when it feels there's too much pressure, it just opens automatically. And it lets the pressure out of the room. Okay. So how often when you and I are sitting down with a seller, do we stop and recognize the pressure that's in the room and let that pressure out? Probably not too often. At least before you recognize that there's pressure in the room, it's really hard for us to remember, oh yeah, let the safety valve open, let the safety valve open. But the next time that you sit down with a seller, I want you to picture that 50,000 pounds of pressure that's in the room, that's on the rail that's going for the steam engine, and let the pressure out. Now, when you're sitting there, it could be as simple as saying this, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm going to try my best today to come up with a good solution for you and I. But at the end of the day, sometimes these things work and sometimes they don't work. And it's okay either way. Totally fine either way. I just want you to know that if I can't help you for some reason, then maybe I can refer somebody to you that can help you. Is that cool? Cool. That's your safety valve. That lets the pressure out of the room. We just had a friend on yesterday who's a mentor of mine, Chris Haskins, brilliant guy. Chris was on and I asked him, like, hey, what do you do when you meet with the seller? Like, what's the first thing that you say? Because Chris is like this totally chill, laid back guy, way more laid back than I am. And I'm like, Chris, so dude, what do you do to just let that pressure out of the room? And he said, well, hey, as soon as I ring the doorbell and they open the door, I say, hey, I'm Chris. Hey, I don't know if I'm going to buy your house today or not, but I'm here to just take a look around and see if we can help one another. And that's what he does. Just cool, right out of the gates. Like I wait until I'm like in there and we talk for a little bit, but he does it right out of the gates. Just lets the pressure right out of the room. Okay. Now, could you imagine Joseph from our story earlier? Joseph, the first time that he met with the Pharaoh, Joseph, after being a slave and in prison for 13 years, do you think he had any pressure in that room right there? Do you think he was feeling like, oh my goodness, like if he was wrong or if he said something insulting, not only could he go back to prison, but he might be executed because now he's sitting in front of the Pharaoh. There was pressure in that room. But what he did to relieve the pressure is he just shut up and he listened. He listened to what the Pharaoh said. He interpreted the dream. He served the Pharaoh. He wasn't there to talk about his own agenda. He listened and served. And that's what we need to do with our sellers too. We listen, we serve. Okay. It's easy once we release the pressure in the room. Okay. Or a lot easier, I should say. But it's much easier to do this business if we release the pressure. Now, the next angle that I want you to think about, it's going to sound a little bit light, but this is actually probably one of the most important ones. And it's this: are you giving up too soon? Let that one echo in your mind for a second. Okay. Are you giving up too soon? And here's what I mean by it. Like when I say giving up too soon, there was a gentleman by the name of Archie Williams who at 22 years old, he was arrested and he got sentenced to life in prison without parole. That's like, you don't have a chance of getting out when you get sentenced to life without parole. And not only was he sentenced to life without parole, but he got sentenced to at Angola prison, which it was one of the bloodiest prisons in America at that time in Louisiana. Insane. Okay. So the thing is that like young Joseph, Archie did not commit a crime. Joseph didn't commit a crime. He was bragging too much to his older brothers, and his older brothers didn't like it. So they falsely sold this poor kid off into slavery. And Archie was very similar. Archie didn't commit any crime. Unfortunately, he was young when all this stuff went down, and somebody accused him of rape and I think homicide. And he wasn't even at the crime scene. They had no DNA against him. And there were 3 witnesses that came to the trial and they testified that he was somewhere else. But the folks that were prosecuting him were blood hungry, so to speak, and they wanted justice. And unfortunately, Archie's head was in their target. And they convicted this man that without any evidence against him. Sad, I know. But that's not the rest of the story. While Archie sat in this prison, he had to keep himself like mentally in the right state of mind. I'll fast forward a little bit on this too, though. Archie, 37 years after he was imprisoned falsely, there was a nonprofit that came along and they dug up some DNA. And with new technology, they were able to match fingerprints to the actual guy that committed the crime, therefore vindicating or setting free Archie. Okay. So after 37 years, this man finally able to walk out and see the light of day again, see outside the bloodiest prison in America walls again, like he should have never been in there in the first place. And when I heard all the story, the first emotions that were going through me is like, this guy must be mad. Like this guy's life was taken away from him, and like that's what I was feeling inside of me. And when they interviewed him, he actually got a chance to sing on, I think it was with Simon Cowell. I don't know if it was on, it's got to be America's Got Talent. I don't think it was on Britain's Got Talent. But anyways, he gets a chance to sing and he got to tell his story. And he's an amazing singer. And he told his story. And when Simon asked him like, hey, how did you not give up, man? And I asked myself the same question, like, You could have easily said, the cards were stacked against me, I'm giving up on this stuff. But he didn't. Here's what he said. Remember this. He said, I would pray and sing, and that's how I got peace. And he said this, freedom is of the mind. I went to prison and I went to prison with my body, but never with my mind. Holy cow. Talk about a guy that never give up. Okay. And like Joseph, Archie didn't give up. Joseph didn't give up. They kept pushing. Okay. Why do I tell you all this stuff? Well, on these real estate deals, there's a certain point when we need to keep following up. Human beings need time. We're asking them to make a really big decision, and we can't ask them to make that decision on the spot every time. Now, there will be deals that are the theoretical, they call it the one-handed touchdown. Like when you get a seller to sign the contract the first time that you're with them, the one appointment close, that's like catching a one-handed touchdown in the NFL. It's hard to score. It's hard to get to the NFL. It's hard to score a touchdown in the NFL, and to get a one-handed touchdown, that's like, woo, praise God, right? And so when we're meeting with sellers, we can't expect all of them to be a one appointment close. Now, sometimes it will happen. The better you get at this, the more confidence you build with the seller, the more trust you build, the more transparent you are, the better you are at letting the pressure out of the room, then these one appointment closes will happen more often, but we can't expect it every time. Okay. Instead, we need to plan to do follow-up, and we need to let them go through the process of absorbing your offer and going through that sequence in their mind, and then eventually coming back. But we can't give up. Just like Joseph, just like Archie, we stick to it. We stay in faith. We keep pushing. I'm going to give you some practical things in just a moment here on not giving up. Okay. The first time that I started my painting business, I told you that I bought my dad's truck. But what I was doing to get painting jobs at the time is I was going and knocking on doors. I'd literally go pick a neighborhood and I'd go door knock. I'd get done with classes at like 2 or 3 o'clock. I'd zip down to a neighborhood and I'd go door knocking the rest of the day until dark. And what would happen is that my very first 15 doors that I knocked on, I got rejected. Boom, boom, boom. And the most common reason that I got rejected was because the dog would start barking. The owner's dog would start barking so much inside the house that the owner would kind of open up the door a little bit and hear the dog barking. And they'd be like, no, no. And they'd shut the door. And I'm like, oh man, these dogs are driving me crazy. So after door 15, I drove over to the pet food store. I bought a box of those dog biscuits. I broke them in half. I stuck them in my pockets. And then I went back and I'm going to keep door knocking. So I kept door knocking, hit door number 16, hit door number 17, dog. I quickly pull out the dog biscuit. Homeowner cracks the door. I hold it up so that they can see it. And they're like, they kind of smiled and they said, okay. And then they open up the door. I give it to the dog. And then the homeowner said this, he said, all right, that was pretty clever. What are you selling? And I'm like, I'm not selling anything. I'm here to give you an estimate for painting on your house. I paint houses to pay for school. Would you like a free estimate on your house? And then sure enough, I started getting some yeses from it. And then what I figured out with that whole thing is that it would take me right around 30 doors, somewhere between 30 and 32. And if I knew that if I hit that number of doors, I would get a paint job from it. Okay. So I'd line my pockets every day after school with dog biscuits. I go door knocking, and I knew that at every 31 doors, I get a paint job. Okay. Thank God for those dog biscuits. They gave me just enough time to impress the owner, to give them the reason that I was there, right? Just enough to say, okay, what are you selling? And then I would basically be able to get in there. And then I took notes in my notebook. I'd track it all, how many doors I hit. And I knew that every single time that I hit 31 tallies in my notebook, I was going to get a paint job. Okay. My point, I think, is made here. But here's the thing. Anything that is worth pushing for in life, you have to push for it. You got to knock on 31 doors. You might have to call the seller back more than once. You can't just write the seller off just because they said, you know what, your offer's too low. You can't do it. That's what the rookie real estate investors do. They hear the seller say, I need 200 for my house. I can't take the $155,000 that you offered. Sorry, it's just too low for me. And then they give up. They let go right then and there. Here's what the experienced real estate investor does instead. The experienced real estate investor says, you know what? I totally understand. I totally respect that. Tell you what, since I'm here anyways, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go through the purchase agreement with you. Who knows? Maybe we'll come to some kind of arrangement here in the future. I'm going to go through my whole process with you. I'll show you the purchase agreement. I'll tell you what next steps are just in case we decide to do something. Is that okay with you? And then the seller's going to say, okay, go ahead. And then you walk through the whole purchase agreement and then you lay out your whole process. You finish the entire presentation. We call it in our world the perfect presentation. We've got all the steps from the beginning to the end, including a PowerPoint presentation, an Excel spreadsheet to present the numbers and show everything open book. But we do the whole thing, regardless of what they say to the number, because we know that the number, yes, that's part of it. But if we listen and listen, we keep going on this presentation, they ask questions, they point things out, and we keep listening, we can probably figure out what's the most important things to them. Okay. Ernie Davis. Who's heard of Ernie Davis? Got a lot of people here. John saying dog biscuits are a great idea. Jennifer says, wow, thank you, Nate. Freedom of the mind. Yeah, I know. I was like, I darn near teared up when I saw it. You can Google search him. That's Archie Davis. Look for America's Got Talent, Archie Davis, and watch that 5-minute clip. Like I got teary eyed watching it. The next gentleman that I want to talk about is Ernie Davis. So Ernie Davis, he was the first African-American man to win the Heisman Trophy. But nothing in his life was easy. It wasn't just like he walked onto a football field and won this Heisman Trophy. What ended up happening to him when he was young, grade school level, is one time he was picking up glass bottles, and he's picking up glass bottles so he could recycle them and make a few bucks. Well, he walked and bagged them up all day long, and then eventually a group of white kids in the area surrounded him and said, hey, give us those bottles. We're taking those bottles from you. And that day, Ernie decided enough was enough. I'm not giving up my bottles. And this group of 8 kids surrounds him, and they're about to take the bottles and attack him. And not only did Ernie hold on to his bottles and just plow through these guys and keep running, but he outran all 8 kids, literally just dusted them, just kept going and going and going. And Ernie's life from that point forward was basically filled with a whole bunch of racial injustice and inequality, like pretty tough road that this guy had. But the thing that stands out to me, not only did he go on and become the best running back in football during his era, but what stood out to me is this. There were times in games when literally he would plow the ball down the field. He would bring it all the way to the 2-yard line, and then the coach would pull him to put in a white kid to score the touchdown. Talk about injustice there, racial injustice, because the coach didn't want people rioting in the stands, black versus white during the time. It's very, very, very tense, almost like the tension that we're feeling right now. And Ernie could have easily given up very many times. He had people trying to pull him and recruit him to do basically protesting and a whole bunch of other stuff. He could have said, screw football, I'm done with all this stuff. But he didn't. He kept pushing forward, and he did it with a positive attitude, which impressed me. Like if I were in his shoes, I probably would have been all fired up. But this guy, he kept his cool and kept pushing and kept pushing. At the Cotton Bowl, literally, he won the game for his team. He was the most valuable player, won the entire game, scored the most touchdowns, the most yards, all that kind of stuff. And then at the award ceremony for the game, him and 3 of his black team members were asked to leave because it was held at a whites only club. Imagine that. Like Ernie Davis could have quit. He could have said, you know what? I'm done. This whole gig that's happening here, I'm done with all this stuff. But he didn't. He stayed in faith and he kept pushing forward. Just like Joseph, he put his best foot forward. He kept pushing to be his best no matter what. And instead, what ended up happening is Ernie Davis was drafted to the NFL. Drafted to the NFL, okay? High rankings, high caliber kid gets drafted to the NFL. And then sadly, right before the season started, he got diagnosed with leukemia. And you'd think at that moment right there, okay, this is when this kid's going to give up. After going through all this in his life, like now he's done. There's a recording, and I would love for you to Google search this and watch this. But during this recording, he's being interviewed by the media, and the media is saying, hey, you just got drafted to the NFL, but now you got leukemia. Are you done? And he smiled back at them and he said, no, guys, I'm not at all done. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to push through this. I'm here 100%. I'm going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And he did. He kept fighting and fighting and fighting. Now, sadly, he eventually lost his life to leukemia. It's very, very sad. but there's the reason that this guy's name will be immortal forever and he'll be ever remembered, Ernie Davis, and there's actually a movie on him called The Express, is because he stayed in faith and he stayed positive. He kept pushing. He was a role model for so many people. Like even when all this crap was going down, this guy kept pushing and pushing and pushing to be the best, and he always rose up. He made, when he was a freshman on the college team, he made his senior peers be better because he kept pushing to be the best no matter what. So he kept pressing on. Okay. So here's the lesson for us in that. Like, we can't give up. When a seller says no, it doesn't mean no forever. It just simply means that they need a little bit of time. Okay. There's literally an article by Pro Sales Connection that shows that it's between the 5th and the 12th follow-up that deals are made. It is not the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. It's the 5th through the 12th that 80% of all deals are made. 80%. How many times have you gone and met with a seller and they tell you that they want retail price? You follow up one more time, they tell you they still want retail price, and then you give up. Okay, I'm guilty of it, I know. But most deals are made between the 5th and the 12th time we contact. The really experienced real estate investor, they keep following up, following up, following up. They follow up until the house is sold. They follow up until the seller says, you know what, you don't have to follow up with me anymore. Instead, the folks that follow up the most, what they're doing each time they talk to the seller is they're building rapport. They're understanding something else that's important to the seller. The seller might say, hey, you know what, I got a college graduation coming up pretty soon for my grandchild, and I got to get a gift for them. And if they hear that, and then when they actually talk about the offer on the house, if they can incorporate a gift to the college graduate soon, that might be the thing that seals the deal. We just never know these things unless we listen and we keep following up. Okay. I don't know what level you're at. Well, some of you I do know. Some of I do because I get the pleasure of working with you right now. But I don't know where everyone's at right now on their journey of how many deals we're doing or how many deals we want to do. But if you're at a spot right now where you're asking yourself like, hey, why can't I just figure this system out to close one deal per month? Or why can't I buy my first rental house? Or why can't I make this real estate business a full-time business? I would start asking yourself these questions. Are you letting the pressure out of the room? Okay. Just like Joseph, when he met the Pharaoh, he could have had all this pressure and buckled, but instead he didn't. Instead, he listened. Are you listening more than you're talking? Are you following up? Okay. Are you giving up too soon? Are you not building enough trust with sellers? Okay. It's a big one. Like when we start doing all this talking and thinking about ourselves first, then it's easy for us to be written off by the seller. They're going to go with the folks that they feel like listen to them. Okay. It's not always the numbers. I bought a house from a gentleman named Chris and his two sisters in Woodbury, Minnesota. And when I met with Chris the first time, I listened a lot. I listened. He told me the whole story about how this was mom and dad's house. It was this ranch style house, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, totally dated, needed a lot of love, filled with stuff. But I listened to him as he took me through the whole story. He took me to the backyard. He told me stories about him when he was a kid and how his sisters loved playing on the swing set. And like, he told me all this stuff. Anyways, fast forward to the day of closing. We signed the deal within a week or two or whatever. And then we closed the deal a few weeks later. And then he tells me at closing, he says, Nate, you know, I could have sold the house higher to somebody else. And I'm like, oh, really? Why didn't you? He's like, yeah, you know, and I said, how much? And he said, 10 for one of them. And I had another one that was going to offer more. And I said, well, why didn't you sell them? 10's a lot of money. And he said, Nate, because you're going to take care of some of the stuff that's in the house. And the other thing that I really liked is that you're going to let my sisters and I come back after the renovation to see it after it's restored. And that just meant a lot to my sisters and I. I'm like, wow. And that was it. I didn't even think really much of it when I was talking to him, but I told him during the conversation, I said, you take as much time as you want with your mom and dad stuff. I understand you need time with it. And then we'll have the Salvation Army donate the rest of it after you're done. You just tell me when you're done and then we'll donate the rest of it. And then I did promise him that after the renovation, they could come back and take pictures. To him and his sisters, that was everything. That was worth more than $10,000 to them on that particular property. Okay. Sometimes price isn't everything. I remember when we went back for photos on that one of the sisters was actually teary-eyed, and she said that this is the way that dad used to keep the house when dad was alive. It's a pretty cool experience. And that was a result of listening. Okay. Listen, listen, listen. Now, if you can relieve the pressure, if you can listen, if you can really be there to understand the seller's situation, and if you can basically adapt to these new standards, then I can start to see you picking up more yeses. Okay. Your dad, like my dad, might have wanted over market value for his house or for his truck. But if you can turn that over market value situation into a win-win for you and for your dad or your seller, whoever it might be, like my dad was, then it might be worth pursuing. Okay. Don't let these old ways of doing things let you get stuck and trapped in not getting the word yes when you're meeting with the sellers. Moses, you guys remember Moses, right? Everybody knows Moses. Moses, he made it out of slavery. Like he got his people out of slavery. He did half the job, maybe more some would consider, but he did at least half the job. We got him out of slavery. But you know that Moses never saw the promised land? Why didn't he get to the promised land? His way of thinking led his people so far, but then they got stranded in the desert right before the promised land. It took a whole nother generation of people. They wandered for 40 years. It took a whole nother generation of people. All the elders basically had to die off before they were able to cross over into the promised land. And it makes me wonder sometimes, myself included, and other real estate investors that we've had the benefit and privilege of helping on their journey. It makes me wonder, like, do we sometimes get stuck in the desert because of the old thinking, kind of like Moses did? Sometimes believing we can't get a seller to say yes, or giving up too soon and talking about our needs ahead of the seller's needs. I told you about that article in Pro Sales Connection. They actually had that verified with a study that was done by the National Sales Executive Association. And they also confirmed the same findings, that it's between the 5th and the 12th follow-up that 80% of deals are done. Now, as we speak, I've been helping, there's a prominent roofing company. I've been helping their CEO and one of their main guys talk about social media marketing. Now, we don't do like roofing companies and all that kind of stuff. We just work with real estate investors for this particular thing, but I'm helping him with he's a pretty prominent guy, and we're going back and forth. And at one point in the conversation, we ended up getting to a yes. It was 5 calls, and it wasn't just like random. I didn't plan that or anything like that. It just happened to be the 5th call. He said yes to a large proposal, and that we would help him on a whole bunch of stuff. And then on the 5th call, after he said yes, we were talking about more stuff. And I realized that what he really needed right now was not a big boost in social media marketing. What he needed for his specific business is some SEO work. In this SEO work, I don't do that. I don't know that field. I don't pretend to know that field. So I referred him over to a friend that does SEO work. I didn't ask for a referral fee or anything like that. I just referred him. And then the friend calls me after we do the 3-way call, and he's like, Nate, I don't get it, man. Like, you had a big proposal in front of you. Why didn't you just take it? Like, why would you refer this over? And I told him, I said, you know what? Because it wouldn't have served him. It wouldn't have really helped him on the spot that he is right now. And then my friend said, I'm so impressed. It's just unheard of. And it's no different when we're working with sellers. There's some deals that you and I should say no to. It's not the right deal, or at least not the right time for that deal to go through. When I was talking with Chris yesterday, my mentor who came on our show yesterday, Chris actually, sometimes when he meets with sellers and they're right up against the wall on foreclosure, rather than talking any business whatsoever, the first thing he does, he says, you know what, just let me help you. I'm gonna throw you a lifeline. I'm gonna help you delay this foreclosure process by a few weeks so that you can just think clearly. I'm gonna get this bank off your back. Would that be helpful? And he helps them. Straight up just helps them. No different with my roofing person that I just mentioned, the CEO of the company. I just wanted to help. I'll help first. And here's what I do know. When we help with that servant mindset first, what typically happens is that the person, they're more impressed that we took the time just to help from the heart. And then they want to do business more with us later, if it's right, if it's meant to be. Now, there's going to be cases where you bump into, we just had one a few days ago that was a short sale situation. Like, their mortgage was way higher than market value, and there just wasn't anything that we could do with it. We couldn't cash flow it or anything like that. So we took them and referred them to a specialist, a short sale agent. Now that one, maybe we can help them by being the first cash offer in on it, maybe not. But it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they get the service and the help that they need. So we referred them out. But if you do that with people, you're going to find that a lot of people come back to you and they want to work with you even more because they feel that and they know that about you. It's not just about you benefiting from the whole transaction. Okay. Now, I want to talk about a couple more things and I'm going to sum this up, and I'm ready to take questions too. So if you've got questions and you want to load them in there, you go ahead and start loading them in there. And I want to answer anything that's on your mind, anything that's on your heart, anything to help you get more deals or get more yeses, get leads or get yeses. I'm all about it today. Okay. It's Friday. We're going into the weekend. I know you guys got sellers to go meet with over the weekend. Okay. I encourage you to do this. Stay in faith that the right seller is coming to you. Okay. As long as you're generating leads, stay in faith. And then for you, you've just got to hold your convictions to this newfound knowledge that you have. Let the pressure out of the room. Listen more than you talk. Don't give up. Okay. Additionally, get educated on the 17 different ways to make offers. Okay. It's not just the lowball cash offer. Sometimes it's buying dad's truck on a seller finance structure. There's 17 different ways that we can buy houses like that. So get educated on the 17 different ways to buy houses. Now you can help sellers 17 different ways. Okay. Now it might not make sense right now, but doing the right thing always makes sense in the end with every single one of these deals. I sometimes like saying the word no for now because it also frees our team up for more yeses when they're the right deal. We've had the blessing and privilege of signing a lot of seller signed contracts in the last 13, now 14 days since Friday, 2 Fridays ago. And it's because we say no to some deals. If the deal doesn't make sense, we got to say no to it. It doesn't mean that I give up. It means that I'll follow up, just like Mr. Joseph, he kept pursuing, just like Ernie kept pursuing, just like Archie kept staying in faith. I'll stay in faith. I won't give up. It just means that I might say no to the deal for now and keep following up with them until we come to something that all parties can say yes to. Okay. The seller might not be the right one to help today, but you should just say to yourself, well, hey, I wonder if I can help them later. Let them have a little time to think about this. Don't go back to your old way of trying to do this business. Learn from the people that we've talked about today. Learn from the iBuyers. The iBuyers literally in 2013, 0 houses. 2018, one of those companies bought 10,000 houses. 2019, they doubled their footprint in 1 calendar year in most of the major markets they were working on. How is that possible? How does one company go from 0 houses and in 5 years buys 10,000 houses? We should pay attention to that. Let's learn from them. Let's also learn from some of the heroes, Joseph, Ernie, and Archie. Also ask yourself this question on the trust building part with sellers. I briefly scanned this, but I told you that we use a PowerPoint presentation and then an Excel spreadsheet to show. But I want you to ask yourself, am I showing the seller real numbers open book? Am I telling them my profit margin? Am I talking about that? A lot of people, they think like, I got to hide that number. No, you don't. The seller knows you're there to make a profit. In fact, if you don't talk about your profit, that now becomes the pink elephant in the room. It's kind of like this weird feeling, like they know that you're there to make profit. So if you don't talk about it, they're going to be thinking it. And you don't want to leave the room with them just thinking it. Let's just talk about it. Might as well just put it on the table. Forever, I tried to hide the profit margin. Like, no, this is my formula. Then they would ask why. And I couldn't even explain what 70% times ARV minus repairs. I couldn't even explain it sometimes. That didn't work. Then when I started getting open book and I put it on a spreadsheet and just put it out there, tell people what it is, then it started working. Okay. It's almost like magic. It's not magic though. It's just being transparent. It's you being you, letting them know the truth. Are you willing to put all your cards on the table? Okay. Laying your cards on the table builds trust. My wife and I, and this is a little bit personal, but I'll share this, but my wife and I, for 4 years, we struggled to get pregnant. I didn't struggle, my wife did, but it's we as a couple, like this is something that we had to deal with. And we kept hearing from doctors that it was related to an autoimmune disease. Could have been other adverse effects like radiation and whatever else. Anyways, it was 4 years of negative results is what it was. And what I did is I kind of just buried my head in work. And I can tell you this, and a lot of you already know this, it doesn't matter how much work you do or how much income you generate for your family, like that doesn't bring happiness. Life is not enjoyable unless the family is happy. Okay. After a so-called nudge from above, we took the decision to try a natural health healing center. My wife really had that calling, like she felt it. And so we said, okay, let's do this. Let's go all hands on deck. She had to stay at this place for 3 full weeks. It's almost a month. It wasn't anywhere near our home. So we had to go rent a small little Airbnb place next to where she was going to be staying because she was there getting treated. And then my son and I, we didn't want to be too far. And so my son and I, we went and supported her on day one. They said, put your cards on the table. Tell us everything. And she had to. She had to list out what she'd been eating for the last month, where she had been, what she had been exposed to, everything. They took blood tests to verify that the cards she put on the table were the true cards that she put on the table. And then the very next day, they put her on this super strict diet. They must have read some of those cards and they're like, we're cleaning you out. Well, anyways, they put her on this super strict green diet, like no cheese, no dairy. I'm not talking about just like cutting out some of the bad stuff, but she was taking wheatgrass shots. She was eating only green salads, no dressings, basically salads and sauerkraut. That's what I felt like it was. The treat was an olive. That was the treat. Okay, she did 3 weeks of this. She had green enemas every day. I'm not even going to explain an enema. If you don't know an enema, you don't want to know what an enema is. But she had wheatgrass enemas every day. And what ended up happening after 21 days, my son and I, like when we would go and meet with her in the middle, like on Saturdays, we could go visit her. That was our like visitation day. We would eat what she ate, and it was like eating like a cow eats outside. That's what I felt like at first. It was not fun. Now today, I'm a little more adapted to it and supportive of her. But after 21 days of doing all this stuff, we picked her up and she looked 10 years younger. She was like glowing. Like, have you ever seen when someone gets pregnant, their face kind of like illuminates? That's what she looked like. She wasn't pregnant at that moment. She's just feeling better. Her body was clean and totally rejuvenated. And then within 8 months, we got pregnant. Now, we know that God gave us that gift. We also know that God gave us the people that helped her clean, basically helped her cleanse her entire body. But it started with this. It started with putting all cards on the table. And it also started with not giving up. Like, imagine if my wife would have got halfway through that program and then on Saturday during visitation day, she's calling me saying, hey, will you sneak me in a donut? Like, that would have been given up. But instead, she just stayed in faith. She put her cards on the table. She didn't give up. She just sat there and kept doing it and doing what they said. She listened to the people every single day. So while she's like going through this cleanse, they had classes every single day and she got educated. So she was learning and listening and listening and listening. And then what ended up happening is that she was able to heal herself, heal her body. And then now we've got a new blessing coming into the world. We're having a child here in July. Like, I'm stoked. Like, this is number 2. We got a huge gap between our kids now, but that's okay. God brings the blessings when God brings the blessings. It started with laying the cards on the table. It started with listening. It started with not giving up. It started with staying in faith. Okay. So at this point, I don't want you to go and get stuck in any of your old ways. I don't want you to get stuck like Moses did. Moses died in the desert. Don't get stuck like that. Instead, take the road that Ernie did, that Archie did, that Joseph did. They never gave up. Okay. They kept pushing. They kept pushing to be their best no matter what. They listened. All right. I hope that you've enjoyed this message. I want to go through and answer questions that you have. I see more comments here about, hey, John, nice having you on too, man. I see more comments that are coming in and whatnot, but whatever questions you have that I can help with on your journey right now for real estate investing, I want to help with. So feel free, go ahead, let me know. And we're gonna great story. Pressure. Wow, Nate, thank you. This is awesome. Thank you, guys. I didn't know what to expect on a Friday afternoon. I thought people, some people might be trying to escape for the weekend, but I appreciate you guys being here. This is good. So what can we help you with? So thanks again. This is from Jenk, at least that's the Zoom name that's popping up. Jenk says, thanks again for awesome stuff. When marketing virtually and you get a contract with a seller that is an absentee vacant owner and you want to wholesale this property, what would you suggest on how to show the property to a buyer when virtually wholesaling? Okay, so I'm going to rephrase that question a little bit to try to make sure that it makes sense for everybody. So Jenk is asking us, and Jenk, let me know what market you're in too. What market are you in? What Jenk is asking us right now is, I want to wholesale a property. I'm working virtually, and my seller, like I'm virtual, so I don't get to like go there and show the property and all that kind of stuff. How can I get a buyer into the property? Jenk, I've struggled with this one in the past as well. Okay, there's not a perfect way to do it, but I'm going to tell you this. It starts with not when you get a buyer, but it starts with when you're with the seller the first time. When you're with the seller the first time, in that conversation, when I'm talking here about laying your cards on the table, I'm not just talking about your profit margin and the whole process and everything. I'm also talking about just being straight up with them on who you are and how you're going to help them. If you know that you're going to wholesale it, then it's a good idea to put that out there up front. Now, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Like you don't want to say, "Hey, Mr. Seller, just so you know, I'm not actually going to buy your property. I'm going to give it to somebody else and I'm going to make a profit in the middle and I'm going to make a huge profit and that's just the way it is." You wouldn't want to do that, obviously. What I do when I'm with sellers, this is a true statement for me. So you can do, if it's true for you, you can modify this however you want so it's true for you. But when I'm with a seller, I explain to them, "Hi, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller. Here's what I'm going to do with the property. I'm either going to buy it and sell it, or I might buy it and hold it as a rental. I might buy it, fix it up, and sell it. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, but at the end of the day, whatever you and I agree upon, I'm going to make sure that you get on the date that we agree upon it. So if we agree upon buying your house for a certain price on 3 weeks from now, I'm going to make sure that 3 weeks from now you have that money. Is that cool with you?" When I ask it like that, 9 out of 10 times they just say, "Oh yeah, cool." 1 out of 10, they might ask me like, "Hey, what does that mean? Can you explain that?" And then I'll explain it. I'm not going to hold anything back. I just tell them it like it is. Sometimes these deals work for me. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes I might be able to refer a buyer to the table. If I do that, then what I would do is I would actually wholesale it to them. I know that that term sounds funny, but it's essentially I'd bring a buyer here and I'd get paid to bring the buyer. But what's most important is that whatever numbers we agree upon, I'm going to make sure you get that number when it comes time for closing. Let me know if that makes sense. Okay. So then you plant that seed up front to them. Now there's no surprise. Like they're not like thinking, is this person trying to pull one over on me? Or now later on, when you got to bring a buyer through the property, you just tell them, "Hey, I got to bring one of my buyers through the property. Yeah, I'm going to let them take a look at it. Can I get them in there Tuesday at 2 o'clock?" So if you're virtual, you can have them be your showing agents, essentially. They just got to let your buyer in. Now, you don't want to parade a mountain. You don't want to have like a tour of people coming through. Try to stick to like 1 or 2 buyers. And the way that I do that is I'm just more strict with the buyers. I literally just tell the buyer, "Hey, buyer, I got a seller living in the property right now. I can't have 19 buyers walk the house. I'm only taking one in that's a serious buyer. This contract's really important to me. I can see you like the deal. Obviously, it's a good deal because it's a really good deal. But the thing is that because I only take one serious buyer in, I do a purchase agreement that's subject to inspection. So we would need to sign a contract with one another that you're going to buy it subject to inspection, which means that if you get in there and you hate the place, you can cancel. That's fine. Don't like do that to me unless you really don't like it. Obviously, we don't want to mess with the seller or tie up the seller's time. But can you understand where I'm coming from, Mr. Buyer? Okay, cool. So we're going to do a contract that's subject to inspection, and then I'll get you in the property. That's how you limit the number of buyers coming in the property. Otherwise, you got to bring 16 buyers through. No, thank you. I'm not going to play that game. I work with serious buyers. Okay. I hope that helps, Jank. Let me know. John says, "I feel as though I'm talking too much when going through the seller net sheet virtually." Virtually. Okay. Try asking more questions. Just when you finish each line, just say, "Hey, does that make sense? Do you follow that?" And then let them tell you the numbers too, John. Like when you're going through the actual spreadsheet to come up with the numbers, I actually usually let them tell me the number. I don't tell them the number. I say, hey, the realtor fee is how much we're going to sell it for. That's this number times 0.06. Can you tell me that number? Can you punch it in on your phone calculator? Okay, great. And that way they're talking, they're part of it. Like you want that number that you get to down at the bottom to be their number just as much as it's your number. It's not just your number you're giving them to them. You're going to arrive at that number together. Diana said pressure. He hit the rock. Okay. Got those ones. And then this one here, Jenk is in Clearwater. Awesome. I love Clearwater. It's beautiful, beautiful place. Winter the dolphin. The Clearwater Marine Aquarium. My son, if you say the word Clearwater and you're not taking him to go see that dolphin, you're in trouble. Man, he loves that dolphin. Who has the movie Dolphin Tale, right? If you've got kids, you probably have the movie Dolphin Tale. So when we went to Clearwater, we had to go see Mr. Dolphin Tale himself. And then Jenk's follow-up question was, so will they already pay the earnest money deposit as the end buyer? Preferably, yeah. Have them put up their earnest money. Preferably, yes. If they do that, they're really serious. I don't always enforce that one, but at a minimum, I'm going to enforce the signed contract. So it's up to you. If you've got a lot of buyers trying to get it, then you just tell the buyers, hey, like, listen, I'm only signing one contract with one buyer. I'll do it subject to inspection, but I need earnest money turned into the title company, and I need the contract signed before I'm going to get you into the property. I don't want to upset my seller. My seller is really important to me on this. Jennifer says, John says, I have to leave. Thanks for sharing. Jennifer says, I needed this. Awesome. And Jennifer, you're doing great. Like I love to see the momentum that you and Joe got going. Like keep that going. If I can help at all, just reach out, let me know. But you guys got some good karma going, good energy. All your lives, I catch one every now and then, and it's good. Okay. Thanks so much. Awesome. Okay, I think I got the questions there. Let me check over here on this Facebook page. Zillow is big on it. Yeah, Zillow is. O'Neill, you're right. Zillow totally, they're becoming one of the larger iBuyers. I know that they paused a little bit during the whole COVID thing, but I don't think that they've killed the business model. Interestingly, Zillow wasn't making a profit in most markets that they were in. I don't know if they've course corrected that or not, but they've got a big machine. You don't want to bid against them because if they can do deals for no profit on the transaction, they're making money elsewhere. They make money marketing to realtors and selling realtors advertising spot, all that kind of stuff. We don't want to get into a bidding war with them, but I'll tell you this, Zillow doesn't buy everything. They walk from most houses that get submitted. They buy a certain box, a certain age of construction, and you can go through Zillow's iBuyer funnel. You can go through Open Doors iBuyer funnel, and you'll see it. They're all a little bit different, but most of them like newer houses in kind of that mid-tier price range. They don't want like low-end houses. They also don't want super high-end houses. So in that mid-range, and then a certain year built or newer. So you're not going to get clobbered by just Zillow or anything like that. Okay, I think I got all of our questions here. Awesome, guys. If this was good and helpful for you, please take a second to share it. Share it with somebody that you think needs to hear it. There's no like sales pitch or anything like that, but share this with people that you think that need to hear this. And if you do find yourself in a spot where you think you need a little bit of help with this, let's jump on a call. Let's figure out if we can help you. We do 30-minute consultations with people all the time. We talk to probably 10 to 12 real estate investors per day. Myself and a couple other folks on our team do it. There's no pressure, no hooks or anything like that. It's just straight up, let's talk about a marketing plan for your business. Right now, you guys got everything you need from the last hour we spent together on how to talk to the seller. Now, if you also would like help getting the leads to come to you, then that's where I think my team could probably serve you. But what you do is you go to socialmediablueprint.com/call, socialmediablueprint.com/call. And on that, you'll see a page where you fill out a little bit of information. Myself and then a couple other team members take those calls. and we go through a marketing plan for you. We figure out your market. We figure out if this system would work, what we do. And if it would work, awesome. If it won't, then we'll tell you. And then if we can help, awesome. If not, that's cool too. We'll give you the blueprint, so to speak, so you can execute it on your own. And then if you've got more questions that come to your mind later, add to this chat. Feel free, type the question in there, and then we'll help you out whenever I see more questions pop on. Okay. Happy Friday, and have a good weekend, guys. Okay. Bye-bye.